Hi, my name's Kira and welcome back to my channel. Yeah, I know it's been a while, but I'm back and better than ever. And I'm here to talk about my top 10 books that I read this year. 2025 went by so fast, and honestly, I had a really great reading year. I think I read 62 books, and then I'm currently reading this beast. So I might end up reading 63 books depending on when I finish that. But in this video, I wanted to talk about my top 10 books and some honorable mentions that I have that didn't make the top 10 list, but that I still really loved. All the books that I'm about to talk about, I highly recommend. I loved them all. I had a really, really great year of reading. Jumping right into it with my first honorable mention, I have three honorable mentions. They all kind of have the same vibe, but starting out with Lie With Me by Felipe Besson. I always would say Felipe Benson Boone, but that's just not right. Also, disclaimer, I'm probably going to mispronounce at least 6 or 7 things in this video, and I can't promise you that the things I'm saying are correct. This book is a memoir. He was a gay man in a small town, and so obviously this is very sad, and it basically details the experience with the first boy he was in a relationship with and how you never quite forget the first one, and translated by Molly Ringwald, whom I love. So random, didn't even know she spoke French. I really enjoyed this. It was beautifully written. It was a very sad story, but I loved reading it. My second honorable mention is A Movable Feast by Ernest Hemingway. This is basically a diary slash like journal entries from when Ernest Hemingway was living in Paris, and he did a lot of his writing while he was in Paris, but specifically A Movable Feast takes place almost entirely in France. It's basically just these short collections of him writing about his day in the life of being a writer in France, the little things he did, the people he met, the drinks he drank. It was extremely vibey, I would say. It felt like I was there. It was such a fun read because it gave me like an insight into what the writing scene in France would have been like back then and his experience with writing. He wrote a lot in this about how he writes and like what his writing routine is, which I thought was extremely interesting. I read Hills Like White Elephants in my senior year of high school, and that was my first time reading anything by Ernest Hemingway. I visited his house, but I never read anything by him until I read Hills Like White Elephants, and it was just and so I just kind of wanted to pick something up by him, and that I saw at my library, so I borrowed a copy of it. Yeah, I don't have a physical copy. I borrowed from my library and I read it, and I really, really enjoyed it. And my last honorable mention, girl, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce this book name because I have no clue where to even start except for Bonjour. This one was so fun. Again, wait, France. One thing that all three of my honorable mention books had in common is they take place in France. Um, I don't know how to say the title, so I'm not going to say it. But basically, this book takes place on the French Riviera. This young girl basically is on summer vacation, and it's her and her dad. And she just gets to frolic on the beach and have fun in the sun. And then there is another character introduced that does kind of wrangle her up. But this book, why it's on my honorable mention is because it was, again, such a vibe. I read it during January. So cold boots where I live, like this not no. And every winter I do this thing where I read one or two books that are literally summer books. This was a summer book. It felt like summer. It did get kind of serious more towards the middle and end. The first half of that book was such a vibe. I felt like I was there. The descriptions of the scenery and what she was doing every day was like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do too. I really enjoyed it and I would recommend it. I'm looking to read more books by this author this year. So I'm looking to read A Certain Smile by her again next year, but I really loved her writing in this one and purely a vibe. That is what I love about a book. Is it when it's a vibe. Yep. So now to get to my actual list of top 10 books. Some of these I don't have, so we are just gonna have to deal with that. Some of them I do have. But starting out my year, I started out this year by reading the Rebel Blue Ranch series by Lila Sage, which I loved so much. Like, I love Lila Sage. Her books are, again, a nice warm hug. But my number 10 book for the year is Lost and Lassoed by Lila Sage. This was my favorite out of the entire series. I think that when you get further into a series and you have these established characters that you already care about from book 1 and 2, that makes their story so much better because you're like, okay, finally, like, geez, finally, it took long enough to get here. I really loved this book. This is basically about Teddy and Gus. And basically, Teddy goes to work for Gus as like a babysitter. He kind of needs someone to take care of his daughter while he's working. One thing I loved about this book, obviously, I loved the romance, but the bond between Riley and Teddy was so sweet. I do not like children in books. I hate children in romance books. The exception is Riley. She's was such a sweet character. She was so fun too, and I loved what her and Teddy did. One thing that I love about a book is a vibe, and this book had a spring summer vibe going on. They like frolicked in the field and picked flowers, and they had like a little like craft book that they were putting their flowers in, and I love the atmosphere of these books. Not only was the romance good, the relationship with Riley was also just so incredibly sweet. I loved it. The next book I do in fact have a physical copy of. I did in fact read Pride and Prejudice this year. Yes, this is my number 9 book of the year. I did it backwards. I did in fact watch the movie first, which had me like rolling on the floor. How have I been missing out on this for so insanely long? So then of course I picked up the book. This is an edition I got for my birthday from my aunt, so thank you. I loved this so much. For some reason, I always assumed that Jane Austen was going to be insanely difficult to read and that I would read a second and do you know that meme of Cillian Murphy and he's reading off the phone and it's like, "Do you seek love? Do you seek the end to love?" That's always how I figured reading Jane Austen or reading like actually really old classics was going to be, because I've read some classics but nothing from like the 1800s, more like the early 1900s. So except for Shakespeare. Don't talk to me about Shakespeare. That was not the case with this at all. I think because I had seen the movie before I read it, I was able to see exactly what was happening and I knew what was going to come next. I think it made my reading process a lot easier with this. This was my year of Pride and Prejudice. How many times did I rewatch the movie? I read the book, I saw the play. It was a great Pride and Prejudice year for me. I absolutely loved this. The next book is another one that I do not own, and it is a big, hard pivot from, well, I guess if Jane Austen didn't do it first, maybe Ali Hazel would never have been able to do it. That's going to be Mate by Ali Hazelwood. I read Bride this year as well, and I feel like I could put Bride and Mate in this one number 8 category because I enjoyed them both, but I think I enjoyed Mate a lot more. And Mate is about the main character from the first book, Misery, her best friend, Serena. She is part werewolf. Woo, yes, girl, she's part werewolf. And basically she's like not acclimating well to werewolf life. And so she's having some problems. Enter her mate. That's why the book is called that. Cohen. He's alpha of the Northwest Pack, and he is her mate, but he does not want that. Tension ensues. I really enjoyed this book because I felt like Cohen was doing everything for her without her even having to ask. He just always knew what she needed, and I really loved that. And he cared about her so much, even though he would not admit that he loves her. He cared about her so much, and he would do anything for her. It takes place in the Pacific Northwest. Yeah, it felt like Gravity Falls. It felt like Twilight. I felt like the characters in this one were really great. I always love like the friend characters and the side characters, especially in Bride. I love the side characters in Bride, but even in Mate, all the like friends and the pack members are super fun and funny and literally delightful. So this just made it super fun to read. And yes, I loved it this year. Read it super fast. Did give it 5 stars. Yeah. We're taking another hard pivot for number 7, and that is The Things They Carry by Tim O'Brien. This is another one that I kind of read for school. Not for school, because of school. I read a passage, How to Tell a True War Story, for my English class because I don't even know why actually. It felt like I got shot in the chest after I read it. It was just so insanely well written, and it reminded me of my favorite part of my favorite book. It's Kafka on the Shore. There's a point in Kafka on the Shore where they go to a like cabin in the woods and they do some frolicking throughout the woods. I love a good book where they're frolicking in the woods, and that is why I love the Rebel Blue Ranch series. A true war story passage felt exactly like my favorite parts in Kafka on the Shore. So I checked the book out from my library and I read this book immediately. Absolutely loved it. It was so insanely good. This is basically a collection of stories about the Vietnam War. It's all from the perspective of one man. I think this is like part fiction, part nonfiction, but I think that this is actually things that happened to him, which is insane. Some of my favorite parts of history class was Learning about the Vietnam War was insane, and so reading about it and reading about people's experience was absolutely horrifying, but also just very interesting, and this book was insanely well written and really great. Number 6 is going to Dance 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 by Haruki Murakami. I tend to read 1 or 2 of his books every year, and this was the book that I chose to read this year. This is a continuation of A Wild Sheep Chase, so you kind of have to read that one first. This is following the same main character from A Wild Sheep Chase, and he is essentially feeling a little bit lost after the events of A Wild Sheep Chase. He's confused on if that even happened because it felt like a fever dream, but ultimately these books aren't really about anything. It's more of a like mental journey than an actual journey. I love his books because they are pretty much all magical realism, and that element is always my favorite of this. There is like a sheep man in these books, and he is so confusing, and everything he does makes no sense, but some of the lines he drops are so hard, it's insane. I feel like the things that he's thinking are like really profound and really well articulated and beautiful, and they like hit you hard. His musings on life, I feel like, is what makes his books good. That's why I loved Kafka on the Shore. That's why I loved Wild Sheep Chase, and that's why I loved this one. Is it just it feels so like subtly emotional. The lessons that he's like teaching in these books, I really appreciate. I don't know. I feel like they make me appreciate being alive. Like his books make me feel comforted, but sad and like melancholic. But ultimately, I close the book and I'm like, I feel more appreciative of my life. That's why I love his books. I don't know really if that explained it well. My number 5 book this year is Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. This book is about two brothers. You follow both of their perspectives, and their father just passed away. They have a very strained relationship. They're honestly not very close at all. They're not close in age, and they're not close emotionally at all. They both had extremely different relationships with their father. I think this book is a good explanation or a good example of how two people can grieve the same person so differently. This book follows Peter and Ivan. I hated Peter and I loved Ivan. I feel bad for saying I hated Peter because, again, his dad just died and he's having a really hard time with that, but I felt like he was rude. Maybe I'd have to reread it again and maybe I would understand him better on a second read, but just the first time around, I did not like Peter at all. I loved Ivan. But I really enjoyed this. This was just like such a standout book of the year. I read it really earlier this year and I never stopped thinking about it. I just love Ivan so much. My number 4 book is a book that I recently finished, and that's The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This book, everyone knows what this book is, but if you happen to not know what it's about, it takes place at like an elite college. It basically just follows this group of students at the college, and they are all crazy. They are all insane, and they all do something extremely bad, and they're all really bad. They're all really bad. But I love this book. I have been meaning to read this book for probably for 4 years. And I read it this year, and I'm so glad that I did because it took me quite a while to read because it was very like dense. At least at the beginning, it felt really difficult to read and it felt really dense. But as you go along, you get used to the characters, you get used to the writing. I was like obsessed with the writing and obsessed with all of the characters and their dynamics and what they were doing. Like sometimes it was just like a day in the life vlog with these guys doing random shit and being hella pretentious, so pretentious, and so strange and detached from reality. By the end of this, I was like, I think it's almost 600 pages. I was sad that it was over when we got to the end because I was like, no, wait, I don't want to leave these characters that I know so much about, even though they're kind of really bad people. I don't want to leave them yet because I feel attached to them and I feel like we have a bond. Unfortunately, I had to let that go. But this book was extremely good. I would recommend you to read it. Honestly, I do get that it's like dark academia, but for me, I would have preferred to read this sometime in like March or April because that's kind of when it takes place. So, I don't know. I would have preferred to read this in like the spring because it does feel like warm and it feels a little claustrophobic. I really enjoy this and I'm really glad that I read it. I recommend it. If you haven't read it yet, give it a shot. And it's not too late to read it now because in my opinion, it's a little bit more of a spring book than a fall book. So if you're like, oh, I have to wait until next fall to read it, don't fret. I think you can read this in the spring too. Ooh. Now we're getting to my top 3, which I'm so excited to talk about. Starting off with my number 3 book, The Favorites by Lane Fargo. Another book that I read at the beginning of this year and I have not stopped thinking about. Non-stop. This book is a Wuthering Heights retelling. It follows these 2 ice dance skaters. And they have like a tumultuous relationship that spans many, many, many years. And this book is a documentation of that. It's very much drama filled, but also I loved the relationships in this book and the friendships in this book. It was so good. I don't have a great relationship with Lane Fargo's first book, but this one, absolutely. It was so gripping and like sucked me right in. I think I read this like 400-page book in 2 sittings maybe, because I was just so enthralled by it. I love the main girl character. She's like one of those characters like in Carrie Soto is Back, where like she's mean. She's mean and she's bad and she does bad things and she says mean things, yet you just can't help but love her. This is like the chaotic book that I love. It feels like watching a TV show. I do think they're doing like a documentary in this book, so maybe that's kind of why it feels like a TV show, but genuinely feels like watching reality TV, and also feels like following along with a group of people for years and years and years. Like, again, like The Secret History, you grow to love all the characters in this so much and you become so attached to them. You just want them to have something go right for them. And I loved this book. Lane Fargo, thank you. I'm really sorry I did not like your other book, because I loved this one. The next book also has a little bit to do with like ice skating and competition and like rivalry. It's a little bit heated of a rivalry that they have going on. Yeah, my number 2 book of the year is going to be Heated Rivalry. Surprised it's not number 1. Baby, just wait a second. Heated Rivalry is hands down one of the best romance books I have ever read in my entire life. I literally I feel so maternal towards them. Like, I feel like they are my babies and I love them so much. I feel like I've been through so much with them. I love them. If you perchance have been living under a rock and you don't know what Heated Rivalry is yet, let me put you on. It's a gay romance between 2 NHL players, but the media also loves to pin 2 young people against each other and say they hate each other. They hate each other. Oh, baby, you could not be any more wrong. Heated Rivalry follows a 10-year situationship between these 2 hockey players. A lot of people would just say, oh, it's spicy, which, yes, it is in fact extremely spicy. But it is also so emotional. And because you're spending, again, 10 years, when you're spending so many years with these characters and you learn them and you love them, you become part of their family. Like, they are my family. I think that Rachel Reed really did a number with this book, because I also read Game Changers this year and that was good, but it wasn't as good as Heated Rivalry. Like, obviously I watched the TV show and I'm completely obsessed with Hudson Williams and Connor Story, which adds so much to it. I'm so glad that I was able to read the book before the show came out, and I was so glad that they made this into a show, because you would never, like, reading this, you'd be like, how is this going to be a show? But they did it, and they did it so well. I think that this is like a dual experience, like reading the book and then also watching the show. It's like freaking, for a moment, are you cosmic love? I always need to like breathe for a minute after I talk about Heated Rivalry. I absolutely adore this book. I love Ilya Rozanov with a big chunk of my heart is for that man, and he's not real. I really love Heated Rivalry. And again, with Heated Rivalry comes The Long Game, so kind of group those together as my number 2 books. I do like Heated Rivalry better, but I really love The Long Game as well. So emotional and so sweet. Yeah, like, all these people will say that these books are just spice. They're not. They're so insanely emotional. There are very tragic things going on. I even just think like Shane's experience with his sexuality and how he's like grappling with that, so real for so many people. And I just think a lot of people forget that this is like real, kind of a little realistic. Maybe not the like hockey rivals part thing, but like your experience with sexuality, like that, I feel like was really realistically portrayed in this book, and I think it makes it really sad. My number 1 top book of the year is a book that I read back in August and changed my life. That's gonna be The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. Maggie Stiefvater, thank you so much for writing this series. I absolutely adore you. This book has a plot, but I would argue that doesn't matter. That's not the appeal of these books. For me personally, it's the friendships. I'm sure for a lot of people it's also that. The friendships in this book are so insanely codependent and dramatic, and they give each other their all. I love the friend group in this book, and they go on a fun journey. I guess maybe sometimes it's not fun, but just the bonds between all of the characters in this book is what makes it so good. My number 1 kind of encapsulates this entire series. Although I do think the first book up until I'm currently reading the last book, and I think maybe this one will be my favorite, but this one was my favorite. I really did like the second and the third book, but this one, the reason why it's my favorite is because I was baffled by the one plot twist that was like about 75% through. Whoa, that had my jaw on the floor and I was screaming out loud. That's probably why this book is my favorite, is because it was the start. It was the beginning. It was getting to know everyone, and that was like so fun to get to know some of my favorite characters for the first time. Yeah. Still, this first book changed something in my brain, changed my brain chemistry, that it has to be my top favorite of the year, and I'm so glad I read it. I would recommend you to read this so much if you just want a fun series with friendship, drama, very dramatic characters. Love so much. I had so much fun reading this year, but I'm also so excited to start next year's reading. I already have big plans. The band is so excited. Can't wait to share that with you. I did take almost 3 months off from my last upload. I don't really know why I did that, but in 2026, I am making it a goal to upload on this channel a little bit more often because I truly love talking about the books that I'm reading and I would love to share them more often. So I'm really sorry for abandoning you for a couple months, but thank you so much for watching this. If you have a little list of your favorite books, comment down below. Top 3, top 10, whatever you want to do. Let me know some of your favorite books. Let me know if you're going to read any of my favorite books or if you did read any of my favorite books. That's going to be the end of today's video. Thank you so much for watching.